Hello and good morning, Frank. How are you doing today?
I'm well and glad to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, too, because I think that we need to be educated. And I think that we need to learn more about what's really going on and not what we're seeing in the headlines and on clickbait.
I can help with that.
We have got the Democratic convention right around the corner, but people, all they're doing is they're looking in the past, they're seeing things that happened in the past, and they're trying to predict their future. And I always say, quit trying to write a story. How do you find your calm, Frank, when it's so easy to just write a story that hasn't even happened?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think the media, and this is all sides of the media spectrum, is in the business of generating anxiety and playing a role in what I call polarization for profit. And, that's based on really putting fear in people. I think there's legitimate concern to be had today. There's no question about that. Look, you could argue that our democracy is being threatened. And, you can argue about which side is threatening it. But, yeah, we should be concerned. But should we be in an all-out panic and fearful? I look back at history. This is how I get my calm. I tell people we've been through a civil war in this country and survived. We've been through a violent civil rights era. We've been through anti-Vietnam protests. The far left radical extremists like Black Panthers were blowing up police stations. There was a time in the 70s where there was a minimum of 10 bombs going off a day in the United States, including at the Capitol, the State Department, and the Pentagon. People forget history. And then with regard to, political conventions, which we're here to talk about today, the security of it in part, 1968 Chicago, violence, police officers beating up protesters and vice versa, anti-Vietnam. We'll get through this. We've got to be active and engaged and vigilant, but I think fear is counterproductive.
Yeah, and it seems like we're all jumping onto that smartphone as quickly as possible because we want to be available the very moment something happens. And when something doesn't happen, that to me is what affects another human's imagination as well as their drive in life. It's like something should be happening. It should be. And you're right. It drives up our anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety doesn't help us at all because it often paralyzes. Fear paralyzes. You need to get off the couch, get away from the phone. Get active. If you're worried about something, do something about it. Volunteer, donate, go be an election helper at a voting precinct or polling place. There's lots you can do. Bring people to the polls. Teach a kid to read. How about that? That's a good one. And so, that's where we are. But sadly, look, my job, 25 years in the FBI, assistant director, counterintelligence, and now today, I'm in my 7th year of being a national security analyst and talking head with the NBC News Network. And, my job is to, sadly, identify the threats and the risks and talk about them. And that's my role, but I also try to put them in proper context.
Now, intelligence has changed, and it continues to change so much globally. I mean, it's more than just, someone that's made a threat in a newspaper. It's more than somebody who's made a threat on the internet. How do you embrace today's intelligence when it's constantly changing, especially when the former president says that he was hacked last week?
Yeah, and boy, the indicators are that for sure that the government's telling us that Iran is clearly launching malware and cyber attacks on both parties. By the way, they've attempted it reportedly with the Harris campaign as well, and reportedly they succeeded with regard to the Trump campaign. We'll wait and see what the outcome is. But it's not just Iran, my friend. It's China and Russia and North Korea all trying to mess with us. This is the new norm. This is not a temporary blip on the intelligence radar screen. So the job of the IC, the intelligence community, to get out in front of this. And boy, you talked about, learning things that aren't in the public eye. Let me tell you something. There is a silent battle going on in the cyber warfare area every day between the U.S. government and these adversaries. The last election was an all-out, gloves-off fight in the cyberspace to protect the election. And we won the cyber war there, but I'm telling you, it's the new norm.
How does Chicago prepare for what's going to be happening next week? I mean, I've read that they're going to move the fences back, but still, you've got those little areas where somebody, a lone actor, could step in and do something that's totally out of the normal.
Yeah, let's talk about the security footprint for Chicago. 2,500 Chicago police officers assigned to the immediate perimeter there, including the Milwaukee Police Department that just successfully dealt with the RNC. And then big, significant development. Both of these conventions are designated National Security Special Events, NSSEs. What does that mean? It means the feds have got this. The feds are bringing all those three-letter agencies in the federal government are coming with their entire toolkit. Some of those tools are even highly classified. So what kind of things do they detect and deter? Look, nuclear, radiological, dirty bomb, biochemical attack, improvised explosives devices, drones, aircraft, all of that being brought to bear on securing the DNC in Chicago.
Yeah. You talked about those 2,500 people that Chicago is putting in there. What about the communication? Because with the shooting that happened with the former president, I mean, they said that there was a communication breakdown.
Boy, you are right to raise this communication issue. We may be in 2024, but by God, the old-fashioned radio failure and different frequency thing is still with us, and I am extremely frustrated because it was something that when I was an agent, I thought someday this thing will go away, this frequency ridiculousness. And you know, we used to solve it in the old days by literally partnering, and you'll see this in Chicago, by the way. It's fail-safe. You partner a local detective with the FBI agent or the Secret Service agent and a county guy or a state trooper and an ATF agent. They each have their own radio in their god darn hand, right? And that's how, you know, you want to get fancy or you want to get simple. If I'm broadcasting on my radio frequency to the feds and the trooper is to the state and local police, then we've got it working. But it's supposed to be more sophisticated than that, and you're supposed to be able to flip a switch and be given that federal radio, right? Because it's encrypted. The feds are encrypted. That's part of the problem. And so you literally have to hand the federal radio to that local partner so that they have the radio too. And then you collect all the federal radios when you're done with the event. Not rocket science, but by God, we seem not to be able to get it right.
We're putting a lot of focus on the Democratic convention, but what about Election Day? That's definitely heavy on my heart because I don't think we have enough police to protect those precincts.
Yeah, we talk about the iconic targets of the Capitol. We saw that horror take place on January 6th. It was ugly. But I'm saying this, the soft target is what we should be looking at. And the softer targets are local and state. And that's where the election takes place, at precincts, at county, where the county locations are, where you're literally collating and counting the vote. The Supreme Courts of each state, where they're going to inevitably have to weigh in on whether something went bad or not. That's where I'm worried. And look, the tone is set by a leader. If you have a candidate who already is projecting, I'm not going to accept the results, right? If I lose, they cheated. That's the equation right now. He's telling us what's going to happen. Yeah. We've got to get ready for that, not only on the legal side, but on the security side. And so that local county security is your local county sheriff and police department. Are they ready for this? I know that the Department of Homeland Security is coming alongside them, training them, equipping them. But listen, if you've got a sheriff who's saying, I'm politically elected, I'm not getting involved in this mess, I got to please my constituents, well, then we have a problem.
Yeah, there really are a lot of copycat leaders in the different individual cities and stuff like that, where they feel like they can get away with saying things and doing things because somebody else has already done it. And you're right, it's those little copycats that really kind of bring fear to a community.
Copycats after Butler, Pennsylvania, and the attempted assassination are a real concern. And, very quietly, if it ever makes the media, it's usually on, page 5. The FBI has been taking down, with Secret Service, other actors who have tried things. I mean, and let's talk international terrorism threat. A couple of months ago, the FBI arrested 8 Tajiks from Tajikistan affiliated with ISIS, who came in through the south border, and they were going to do something, and they were taken down. More recently, Taylor Swift had to cancel her concert tour in Austria because of an ISIS-related terror threat. Very young men radicalized online. that kind of thing happens here. We do have online radicalization, domestic terror and international terror. That's a tough thing to thwart as well.
Why it took so long for anybody to really make their move. It seems like it was like a watch and see kind of thing, and then they jumped on it.
Oh, gosh, what a colossal failure that was by the Secret Service. And, you know, the finger pointing, oh, we gave that building to the locals. Well, look, let me tell you something. The buck stops with you. It's your event. And you identified in your advance visit that building was a close-in, elevated threat. And you handed that, not only did you hand that to the local and county authorities, but you put it outside your perimeter. Mm-hmm. So I think when all is said and done in this investigation being done by the DHSIG, we're going to find that for a very long time, the Secret Service has been under-resourced and has been handing off responsibilities to local police way too much. And so, you know, that very weekend they were handling an event with Jill Biden. They were staging in Milwaukee for the RNC. How many protectees and events can they really handle at once? And I think the dirty little secret is not many without handing off and over-relying on local police.
Yeah, because doesn't that lessen the strength and the experience? The more and more events you have, you have less experience out there.
Well, you get really burned out and tired. And now if you're handing off and delegating to local police on a regular basis, these men and women don't have anywhere near the experience you have at protective details, if any, at all. And the rules of engagement differ in all of that. So it's not realistic to think that we can continue with the status quo here. And one of the things that needs to change is the culture as well, which is very defensive and insular. And I've been calling for, when there's a new director coming for Secret Service, it needs to be from outside the agency.
Yeah. One of the things that, because once we talked about this earlier, you try not to write the story, but your imagination does. And my fear is the wag the dog kind of a story is that while this convention is taking place in Chicago, other countries will raise the level of their war to get our attention going in that direction and take it off what's going on with the Democratic convention.
You are right. It's the old distraction thing. Hey, shiny object over here. Yeah. Well, what's happening over there? So somebody like, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, yep. Boy, would he love to raise his flag during this, right? He knows he'll have the media attention. And this is why I'm concerned with this global audience on the convention in Chicago, that some other thing will happen, and even could happen outside the perimeter in another part of Chicago, because they know the world media is in town. Why not do something really horrific in another part of Chicago as well?
Well, I thought that's one of the reasons why there's going to be so many protest groups there that are coming from outside the country, because they're there to be heard and to be seen.
Yeah, they need the camera, they need the microphone, and I get it. We've got to preserve free speech and freedom of assembly. That's going to happen. What I'm more concerned about is the violent actor that says, this is my time in the spotlight, I'm going to do this. And it could be international, it could be domestic, could be that lone actor that's so hard to detect and deter. But, I think this is in hand. I can't predict the action of foreign adversaries, except, we haven't even talked about the foreign capabilities with cyber. I mean, we've had this news this week with regard to a hack allegedly by Iran into the Trump campaign, and now the government says, hey, we've been investigating the same thing with regard to the Harris campaign. What if there is a massive cyber attack on the venue or the media equipment with regard to Chicago and the convention? Boy, that would catch a lot of attention.
Oh, the electrical grid. My God, that's always been on my mind. What happens if they can tap into that or get into the financial system? So suddenly we can't get our money.
Well, because you pay attention, that our adversaries have absolutely been in our grid, have told us they can shut down 911, they can shut down water power and hydroelectric dams. They've done it. They wave hello almost every day in those systems. So if they wanted to turn the lights off or the 911 system off in Chicago, yep. They can do it. The question is to what end, and are they ready for us to reciprocate?
Frank, how were you trained if there's ever utter chaos? I mean, as a martial artist, we were always trained to not put ourselves in a situation that deals with that. But no, when there is chaos, you've got to walk into the fire, Frank.
Yeah, that's particularly true for law enforcement on the street level. But I also have seen over my years of experience the wrong approach of executive and command staff, which is I sometimes shake my head when I see a chief of police launch into a crowd of chaos and wants to show his presence. That's a mistake. The command and control element needs to be away from the venue and safe, and be able to make command decisions without worrying about their own physical safety. So I know that's going on with what's called a Joint Operations Center and Joint Intelligence Center for the convention. So that's good. I don't like to see executives wading into a chaos. You've got to keep, the other thing I tell on the street agents and officers is maintain your plan, which is, and I know everybody has a plan until they're hit in the face, as the boxer Mike Tyson said famously. But you've got, go with your training and your instinct. Buddy up, stay with your partner. Don't separate. Stay on the radio. Retain your weapon if you're actually in a brutal physical battle. Get to safety soon. Your safety is more important than suppressing the chaos around you. So get that done. You're no help to anybody if you're injured or down. And they've been training. The Chicago chief has said they have spent days training all of these officers, even the out-of-town officers, on riot control and suppression and crowds. So they've got that training. I think that's going to serve them well.
Yeah. How will you study this, and what will you take from it? Because there's going to be other events right after this. So therefore, I mean, how do you prepare for something like this, Frank, and then learn as you grow forward?
Yeah, there's always going to be, what they call the after-action report on any special event, and you've got to learn from it, or you're bound to repeat the mistakes. Look at the mistakes made in Butler, Pennsylvania, at the rally. So, the good news: we have a recent convention, the RNC, that went off very well. There's lots going on behind the scenes that we don't get covered in the media, that I always kind of check my sources to find out about. So what do I mean by that? There's things called knock and talks, where if law enforcement suspects you're up to something, they'll literally knock on your door and have a little chat with you. We're on to you. And by the way, if you get on a plane, train, or bus on your way to Chicago, that could be the first step in a conspiracy charge. So maybe you shouldn't travel. They let you know they're on to you. That goes on a lot. Secret Service, by the way, has tremendous authority to detain somebody beyond the FBI's authority because he or she poses a threat to a protectee. So there are people who will find themselves, brushing their teeth in the local lockup, and then released right after the event. That's their authority, and lots of that going on right now in the intelligence field.
Wow, where can someone go to find out more about you, Frank, and to learn from you? Because you're such a great educator.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have a website. It's frankfigliuzzi.com, Figliuzzi, frankfigliuzzi.com. You can sign up for free for alerts on my appearances and my columns I write and all my NBC TV appearances. And then, I've got a book out, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killer, true story of the FBI's hunt for long haul truckers who are killing hundreds of women on our nation's highways. That's out there. And I'm on all over social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Thread.
Are you the guy that helped out that school when it comes to those trucking murders? Because, I mean, I've heard so many, and I've done so many interviews about these trucker murders.
I'm not that guy, but I am someone who went 2,000 miles on the road in a big rig to learn the subculture of trucking. And I cover in my book the victims, who are largely sex-trafficked women. I talk about the intelligence analysts who are connecting the dots to stop the killing. But 850 women have been murdered on our nation's highways, mostly by long-haul truckers.
Wow. We've got to get together and talk about this on a future day when we've got more time, Frank.
I'd love to do it.
Excellent.
Let's do it.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.